Is moving to Scotland the right decision for you? Whether it's dreaming about living in the beautiful, picturesque Scottish Highlands, absorbing the culture of Edinburgh, or immersing yourself in hustle and bustle of Glasgow, we need to figure out whether the cost of living in Scotland compared to wherever you're from is actually worth it. In this video, we're going to discuss about the differences between cost of living compared to places like America, Southeast Asia, and Scotland, and then we'll see whether or not it's the perfect decision for you. Let's dive into it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is rent and housing. When you're moving abroad, obviously one of the biggest factors of whether or not it's the right decision is housing. Is housing affordable or not, right? I'm going to talk specifically around Glasgow because that's where I live. According to the Office for National Statistics website, monthly rent in Glasgow is about $1,200 per month. It obviously differs based on what type of apartment you get. So if it's a one-bedroom apartment in the city centre, you're likely to pay between $800 to £1,000 per month on rent, whereas if you need more space, a two-bedroom flat for example, it will be between about $1,000 to $1,300 a month. Compared to places like New York City, for example, the average rent in New York is about almost $4,000 per month, and I feel like that's a little bit pricey for a small space, whereas in Glasgow you can get a comfortable space for at least $800 to £1,000 per month. But what about buying properties in Glasgow? According to the Office for National Statistics website, for first-time buyers, the average price is about £166,000. That is kind of the average price point right now for property. And for example, if you want a 25-year mortgage, you'll get an average interest rate of 3%, and you would probably pay about £600 to £800 a month on your mortgage. That being said, you still need to save a pretty big deposit, so between 10 to 20%, 20 grand. Depending on what your employment status is or what type of job you have, sometimes that's really difficult to save up for. In general, first-time buyers are able to afford a property that's between £150,000 to £200,000. It really is dependent on your job, I think, and whether or not you're a double income household. Next up, let's talk about utilities and household costs. Whenever you live in any city in the UK, you're expected to pay bills like electricity, gas, water, internet, your phone, all that kind of stuff, right? So for a one-bedroom flat in Scotland, you're looking at paying between £120 to £150 per month on stuff like your bills and also including your council tax. The council tax itself covers local services like waste collection and recycling. To put it to perspective, in Glasgow specifically, the average salary is about £33,000. The average monthly household income in Scotland is around £2,500, and so utilities make up 5 to 6% of that income. Stuff like phone bills are really cheap, so I use giffgaff and I pay something like £15 a month for 30 or 40 gigs of data, and I think that's pretty affordable. I don't necessarily think that their coverage is the best, but I don't have a contract with them. It's more of like a rolling top-up type thing every single month, and I much prefer that so that I don't have to be tied to a company. So yeah, there are ways to kind of keep some of the bills down, you know what I mean? Next up, let's talk about grocery costs. The cost of groceries in Scotland is pretty standard. On average per week, I think you would spend between £30 to £50, but it really does depend on how many people are in your household. Between me and my partner, we would probably spend per month between £200 to £400 on groceries. If you're doing a weekly shop, it can be between £50 to £100. I would say in general, vegetables are pretty affordable. You can get tomatoes, for example, for £90 to £150, bags of pasta for £1, and you can also get things like bread for less than £1. But is the quality of the food that you buy determined by where you shop? I prefer shopping in supermarkets like Co-op, Morrison's, and Marks & Spencer. I like Co-op because they are conveniently placed in different neighborhoods, so they're the most accessible. I like Morrison's because most of the time they have the most affordable butcher, and I also really like Marks & Spencer because they have a lot of options for really high quality items. For example, they have really good cheeses. So dependent on what we're feeling like that month, we'll shop at different supermarkets, and that obviously means that there's a difference between how much we spend on groceries per month. But on average, I would say it ranges between 200 to 400 a month. I would put aside quite a bit of money for eating a lot of food. Next up, let's talk about transportation costs. Now, if you are a person that relies on public transportation, I'm sorry to say to you, but I don't think that it is particularly the most affordable option. There are different options for public transport in Scotland. Specifically in Glasgow, we've got trains, subway, buses, taxis, Ubers, all this kind of stuff. But I don't think it is the cheapest option. So let's break it down. If you are someone who relies on buses, tickets can vary depending on what type of ticket you buy. So if you buy a single fare, it can be between £2 to £6. If you buy a weekly fare, it can be between £22 to £30. It really is dependent on where you travel from and also how long your journey is. In terms of trains, I would say ScotRail is not particularly affordable. For example, if you are someone who works between Glasgow and Edinburgh, like myself, if you are traveling between the two cities on non-peak hours, it can be about £16 to £17 for a return ticket. But if you travel on a busy time, peak hour, it can be £30 to £35 for a return ticket between Glasgow and Edinburgh. For the Glasgow subway system, our really small and very cute subway system, it depends on what type of ticket you buy. So if you buy a single ticket, it is £1.65. If you buy an all-day ticket, it is £3.20. If you buy a 28-day ticket, it's £58. And if you buy a yearly ticket, it's £500. If you are a person that doesn't necessarily want to rely on public transport, then you can either walk around Glasgow, which is what I do, or you can consider getting a car. Cars average between £12,000 to £20,000 in Glasgow, and this is like cars that are not particularly fancy, maybe manual cars, not overly expensive cars. But if you want a slightly pricier, bougier car, then it can be about £35,000. Just FYI though, in places like Glasgow, Edinburgh, and probably other big cities as well, there is something now called the low emission zone, where access for certain vehicles, particularly those with higher emission, is restricted or subject to charge to improve the air quality and public health of the city. So if you are buying a used car, you have to ensure that it actually fits within the LEZ kind of criteria, or else you're gonna get fined. Next up, let's talk about dining out and entertainment. One of the best things about living in Glasgow at this very moment is that our food and nightlife scene is actually pretty good. It is a growing culture and there's a lot more people that are interested in going out to eat, which is great for me. The entertainment scene is quite vibrant and some would say affordable, some would say overpriced, but let's talk about that. If you go to a mid-range restaurant, for example, Paisano, which is one of the most popular pizza places here in Glasgow, you are probably expected to pay between £12 to £25 per person. With that, you can get a pizza, side, and probably a drink. For a quick bite to eat, like a sandwich, you can still get a meal deal, but it's no longer £3 per meal deal. It's probably about £5 now. And if you go to certain entertainment places like cinemas, tickets can be between £10 to £15 for a showing, and snacks will be extortionate, to be honest. I love going to cafes, but I do realize that the cost of coffees nowadays are actually pretty overpriced. So bear in mind that you will be paying between £3 to £5 for either a specialty coffee or a specialty drink like some sort of matcha drink. I would highly recommend it that if you do love going out to eat, please support your local independent Scottish businesses. Here are some examples. They are amazing small businesses in Glasgow that you should go and visit and spend your money at. Now let's talk about healthcare. In Scotland, healthcare is mostly free, especially if you're a resident here. Most services, including GP visits, hospital treatments, and emergency care, are covered by the NHS. I would actually say that the way you pay for the NHS, apart from your taxes, is that you're paying with time. It does take a while to get checked up, and most of the time, the NHS doesn't really diagnose you immediately unless it's an emergency. So for example, when I had a minor fracture on my foot last year, I went through 111, which is an NHS call service, and I immediately got a doctor who would assess my foot. I had to actually hold my phone up and show the doctor my foot, which was a little bit awkward. I definitely needed an x-ray, so they referred me to a hospital in Glasgow. I got treated in a minor injuries ward, I got the x-ray done, and I eventually got a boot. From the day that I made the call to going to the hospital, it was about 2 to 3 days. So it's not an immediate service, but I was well taken care of, and I appreciate that my taxes are going to the free services and the free healthcare that the NHS provides. If, however, you would like to go for private healthcare, for example, Nuffield, you can expect to pay between £50 to £100 for a consultation with a private doctor. And if you obviously need a specialist, then that will cost more. I've also gone to Nuffield for a private consultation. This was when I suspected that I would have Lyme disease, and I had very strange symptoms which I associated to Lyme disease. So instead of waiting for the NHS, I just went straight to a private doctor. I paid about £80 to £90 to get tested, like my blood work and everything. And it actually came back positive that I had Lyme disease one summer. And if I hadn't done that, my disease would have probably progressed and I would have gotten worse symptoms. So because I was diagnosed very quickly at the private hospital, I could get my medication. I was on medication for like 2 months to try and eradicate the Lyme disease, and it was all good. For something like dental checkups, for example, some dentists are covered by the NHS, so you would have to check based on the neighborhood that you live in and check with the dentist that's near you whether they're covered by the NHS. If not, a private dentist can be between £25 to £60 for just a normal checkup. I have paid quite a bit of money to get like Invisaligns done or whatever, but when I did do cleaning, like scaling for example, it was about £80 to £150. It really does depend on the dentist that you go to. Lastly, optometrists are covered by the NHS. If you want to go to get your eyes checked, to get a prescription, you can go and do that for free. But if you want to have additional exams, it can cost between £10 to £30. It just depends. But I always go to Specsavers. It's usually covered, and I do it every year, every 2 years, just to check whether my eyes are getting worse or not. Now let's talk about the final thing and also my favorite topic, work-life balance. Scotland as a nation, in my opinion, has great work-life balance. Over here, they are very generous with their annual leave and sick leave, and your standard hours for the week is 37.5 hours. Working in Scotland as well, if you're pregnant and expecting a child, you are guaranteed 52 weeks of maternity leave, and depending on the companies that you work for, you'll also definitely get paternity leave as well, so dads can do their fair share of parenting, which is great. Work from home is still a thing here in Glasgow. Basically tailor your calendar and your schedules based on what your responsibilities are. So, do you think that moving to Scotland is the right decision for you? After we had all of this discussion, let me share my thoughts. In my opinion, after moving here from Malaysia, I love living in Scotland. Obviously, in every place that you live in, it's never going to be perfect, but building a life and a profession here in Scotland has been wonderful. I really enjoy living here. I really enjoy the culture here, specifically in Glasgow, being one of the friendliest cities in the whole of UK. I love being well connected to the Scottish Highlands, to nature, to the most beautiful landscape in the whole world. I love that I have full control of my work-life balance and I am able to work based on my schedule as a sole trader. And honestly, if you are a person who's looking to move to Glasgow or Edinburgh or Scotland in general, I would highly recommend it. I hope that this video has been helpful in giving you all the information required to make the right decision for you. Let me know in the comments below if I missed anything out or if you have any questions. I would be happy to help in any way possible. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more tips on living in Scotland. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!